What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and welcome to the second episode of our quest for the best team in Darkest Dungeon 2. The first one did pretty well, so I'm happy to keep making them. In this video, we're going to talk about a new team, no returning characters from the previous video. I'll make sure to include the path suggestions as well, because that was the most common request. Before we start the video, I want to give a super big thank you to Stuffy Player, one of our recent YouTube members. Very appreciative of the support, and if you want to join the YouTube membership program, make sure you click the link or the join button down below under the video to get exclusive perks like video shoutouts and custom emotes. The working name for this team is going to be More Stars. I'm not the best at naming things, so please don't hate me for that, but we're referencing Flag being on the team with More, and Occultist throwing burning stars as often as possible. The team is Hellion in the front, Flagellant in the middle, Jester behind Flagellant, and then Occultist in the back. My path recommendations are Ravager for Hellion. Flag is honestly up to you. All of his paths are just good for different reasons. If you want a more heal heavy Flag, then maybe Scourge, but if you want a nice option of some extra damage and stuff, then Wander or Exanimate, or if you want some help mitigating negative tokens, then there's Maniac. You really can't go wrong with any path. It really comes down to the confession or whatever other goals you're trying to achieve. For Jester, I'm going to suggest Virtuoso. This is strictly optimization. Virtuoso is just the best path that he has, and it helps to enable our Warlock Occultist. The main strategy for this team is that Hellion just beats the hell out of anything in rank 1, 2, or 4. Flag spams more and tries not to die while healing other people. And then we have Jester, who is setting up Occultist, and then Occultist blasts anything that's left. I'll explain why in a minute, but we'll talk about what the team is good at. And it's good at reach, it's good at sustain between Flag and Occultist being able to heal, Hellion having 2 self-heals, Jester being naturally dodgy and stuff. And then finally, it has Encore. This is how we set up Occultist. This is also why we take Virtuoso. Virtuoso gets a nice +3 speed bonus, and Encore is specifically reserved for Occultist on turn 1. Most of the time, Jester will go first, and then Jester can throw Encore at Occultist, and if he does, Occultist can use the extra turn, or the extra action rather, to use Chaotic Offering, and then when his normal turn comes around, he gets 2 unchecked power. What this does is enable him to use Burning Stars immediately on turn 1 in most cases. And as I said, if you get the Warlock chance of unchecked power tokens, then you can throw out a Burning Stars on turn 2 as well, possibly. If you want to opt for a bit more control, you can use Abyssal Artillery when upgraded. If you have 2 unchecked power tokens, it stuns the targets. Reason I rate Encore so highly as a move, if you watched my other videos, I always say that Encore is the best move in the game because it can become any other move in the game, and it breaks some of the normal rules in terms of turn order. For example, damage over time effects, bleed, burn, and stuff, do not proc on extra actions. So if you need to in a pinch, you can do some really cool things like Encore someone on Death's Door, and then they pass their turn and heal off of Death's Door. Now we can talk about what this team is bad at. It doesn't have the best damage over time capability if you're not running Malediction. Ravager Hellion doesn't usually like to hit bleed outs, and Flag is doing other things besides attacking with Blight, and then if Jester is doing a lot of support, he might not be bleeding things. So it's really just a direct damage type of team. The second weakness of the team is it has some pretty bad movement outside of a couple of things. So if it gets shuffled, it actually struggles a bit in getting back in order. Outside of Hellion, the only person that can move other people as well as themselves while doing something is Jester. The final weakness worth mentioning is this team is surprisingly squishy. It doesn't generate block tokens, at least not easily. It doesn't have much in the way of dodge generation. It has a blind, and has a couple taunts and some weaken, but that's about it. So if you run into something silly like Elite Ordained Docker, he can actually just put so much pressure on you that it's hard to keep up. To circumvent this, you should probably focus fire all of the enemies that do a lot of damage quickly, and put the stress dealers to the side a little bit because you have Jester, who is the best single target stress healer in the game. For the base regions of the game, this team does pretty well in everything except the Fetter. And the reason for this is that Flag's damage doesn't really show up because it's really hard for him to get reliable blight piercing. He doesn't have an alchemist path. And since the team is light on damage over time, when it comes to the enemies of the fetter that like to consume corpses and heal, this team might have a little bit of trouble finishing them off because it doesn't have a lot in the way of pressure once something is on Death's Door. Thankfully though, if you do need it, you have 2 corpse destruction moves in the form of Demon's Pull and Fester. As far as confession bosses go, 1 and 2 are pretty manageable for this team, especially if you keep Warlock. But for 3, 4, and to an extent 5, but for 3 and 4 specifically, I would almost recommend swapping Occultist down to Ritualist because Malediction and the tokens that can be removed by the curses are very helpful for those 2 fights. For upgrade priority on this team, I would say the first tier should be Inspiring Tune and Iron Swan. I know people say that you don't necessarily need the boosted stress heal at the beginning, but the reason I do it is just to be safe because one of the things that will beat you, but you don't notice it until like 2 hours later, are bad relationships. The biggest contributing factor to bad relationships is stress. Iron Swan is just to help clean up those rank 4 enemies because most things in Region 1 will go down to a baseline Howling End, especially with Ravager, but you could upgrade Howling End as well if you want to try and blow up a boss. The next set of moves I'd recommend upgrading are more on Flag, just to keep his health up when he spam taunts, toe-to-toe to make sure that Hellion can clear Winded on herself, and then finally, whatever damage move that you're spamming with Occultist. Most of the time it's Burning Stars, but there are cases for Abyssal Artillery. Ideally, your next 3 upgrades are most likely Howling End, Weird Reconstruction, and Fade to Black. This gives you a bit more damage, as well as slightly more consistent healing with Occultist, and then Fade to Black is just a great move, so being able to have it combo and give it a little more damage is always nice. After that, it's up to you what to upgrade. Usually this depends on whatever regions are left and the Confession boss or a Lair boss you're trying to take down. Some solid choices are Adrenaline Rush, some other form of Occultist damage, Malediction if you made the swap to Ritualist, as well as some other thing for Flag to hit for damage, like Punish. Of note, I am not suggesting the solo finale loop with Jester, which is just simply upgraded Encore, Solo, and then Finale, because you can loop those 3 abilities back to back. With Ravager, Hellion, and Flag not usually appreciating being in rank 3, this isn't so much of a solo team. Alright y'all, that's going to do it for the video. Thanks for watching. Hope it was informative. Hope you learned something. As always, leave your thoughts, criticisms, questions, advice for other players and stuff down below in the comments. Make sure to check out the description box for all the cool links that support the community. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.